Welcome to the Office of Undergraduate Research Education Series. Today we have an undergraduate research mentor panel. Our panelists are Dr. Gannet, Hallar, Dr. Tino, Nyawelo, Dr. Jeff Rose, and Dr. Yan-Ting, Shiu. Our facilitator is Dr. Isabel Fukushima. This is a virtual event and it's being recorded, so please mute yourself and turn off your camera to ensure the best experience. And if you have questions, please use the chat feature or unmute yourself when you're invited by the speaker. This is the event evaluation. We encourage everyone to fill that out after the event. But specifically, the Europe scholars must complete this evaluation in order to receive credit for attending the event. And I will also put the link in the chat. The mission of the University of Utah Office of Undergraduate Research is to facilitate and promote undergraduate, student, faculty, collaborative research, and creative works in all disciplines throughout the University of Utah campus. In recognition that excellence requires diversity, we pursue this mission through equitable programming that promotes diverse representation and social justice. We acknowledge that this land, which is named for the Ute tribe, is the traditional and ancestral homeland of the Shoshone, Paiute, Goshute, and Ute tribes. The University of Utah recognizes and respects the enduring relationship that exists between many indigenous peoples and their traditional homelands. We respect the sovereign relationship between tribes, states, and the federal government, and we affirm the University of Utah's commitment to a partnership with Native nations and urban Indian communities through research, education, and community outreach activities. And now I'd like to introduce our facilitator, Dr. Isabel Fukushima. She's the Associate Dean of Undergraduate Studies and the Director of the Office of Undergraduate Research. And she will introduce our panelists.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We know we have some live participants, and we also will have some other folks who will be joining us after this event is posted. So thank you all for checking out what is an important topic, thinking about mentors in undergraduate research experiences. We are super fortunate to have an expert panel of folks. We're joined by Dr. Gannet Hallar, who is a professor of atmospheric sciences, also Dr. Tino Nyawelo, who is a professor of physics and astronomy, Dr. Jeff Rose, who's an assistant professor of parks, recreation, and tourism, and Dr. Yan-Ting, who's a professor of nephrology. What an expert group of folks. We're super excited to have them here. The way that this is going to work is I'm going to ask a question. I'll invite our panelists to respond. And then what we'll do afterwards is at the end, there'll be time for questions. But you know what? If you have a burning question that you feel like, as they're talking, it comes up, please feel free to use the chat feature, and we can take a look at those questions as they come through. And if it makes sense to answer it then, we will give our panelists an opportunity to answer it then or at the end. So why don't we just go ahead and get started? I'm super honored to have such a wonderful group of folks that I know have been mentoring a ton of students. And our first thematic area that we're going to focus our discussion on, and I'll invite each speaker to reflect on these questions, is early connections. So what we'd love to know from your perspective is, how do students find mentors like you, or mentors in your team or in your college? When they find mentors, what happens? So when they find you, what happens? And when a student connects with faculty like you, how do they pitch themselves? And so really, we're trying to have you all share with us from your experiences, how people find you, how do they connect with you? What's that experience like? So I'm going to go ahead and stop the screen share, and I'm going to go ahead and invite first Dr. Hallar, and I'll call on each person to kind of reflect on your experience on those questions.
Sure, I'm happy to. I'm happy to be here. So in terms of how do students find us, I can't encourage students enough to participate in activities that you think would be interesting within your department or your school. So many times students find mentors through outreach activities that in my case, the Department of Atmospheric Science has. We often set up booths in the FSAB building. We also have a professional development class in which we have a poster session with all of the faculty so that they get to know faculty. And it really just takes a little initiative on your part to try to reach out. Maybe you have a favorite instructor that you've really enjoyed getting to know. Simply asking them if there's an opportunity available might be a really helpful way. In terms of pitching yourself, I think just expressing your interest. I wouldn't worry too much about not having the skills needed. We can always train you in skills. One thing that I often hear from students is, oh, I didn't talk to the professor because I don't know how to X well enough, whatever X is, write well enough. I don't know enough about the subject. I don't know how to code well enough, whatever that is. That's just really talking yourself out of a great opportunity before you even approached it. So I would strongly encourage you to approach a professor and be very honest about your excitement, what you know, what you don't know, and that you're willing to learn. And that's really the stage an undergraduate research should be.
Dr. Nyawelo.
Thank you, Annie, for also inviting me to this panel. Let me also expand a little bit further for what my colleague Gannet said. So, especially for minority students, sometimes it's very intimidating to approach a professor. So what we could do actually is to reach out, and instead of waiting for the student to come to us, we need to really find where they are and present ourselves to student. So two things that I'm doing in my department is that there is actually a course that I used to run, is a 2-credit course, which is undergraduate seminar. So those are for new students who are coming to the university. So what I usually do is once a week, and the purpose of the course actually is to give a student a broad picture of what nice thing we're doing in physics, and it's a way for us to introduce our research faculty. So we invite a research faculty to come and present their work in a very elementary level, and then advertise themselves and talk to students that, if you like what you're doing, I have opportunities and this kind of thing. So that is how we connect with our students. The second thing also that we do is also, after that, this is something that we are starting recently. We will open an application just to assess student needs. So all faculty, student will be asked to just submit a short resume and a statement about their interest in doing research, what kind of research they would like to do. And then based on that, and how their interest will fit into all those goals. And then all this application will go to all faculty, and then faculty will respond to every student that express interest in working with them. Then the second part, then when they find a mentor through that process or any kind of process, as a mentor, we need to start working on building a secure, caring, and safe environment in which all students will feel acceptable to fail and learn from those mistakes. So that is the next thing that you need, because being a mentor or mentee, you need to build those kind of meaningful relationship. And there is a lot of way that a number of elements that you could employ to start building those kind of relationship. Number one is you need to evaluate your student understanding, talent, and build on them. And then give a student also the ownership of their work and promote accountability. And then finally, develop a relationship foundation which is mutual respect. So you need to start working on those relationship. I will stop here and then see if another person wants to expand.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Nyawelo. Dr. Shiu.
My two colleagues have given just excellent suggestions and advices. So I want to add a little bit to what they said is, so sometimes your students may be interested in research that don't have undergraduate programs, such as where I am. So I'm in School of Medicine, and we have a lot of students undergraduate students who do research in School of Medicine, even though we don't have the traditional undergraduate programs. So then how do you find us? So the Office of Undergraduate Research website is an excellent start. So go there. There is a click called Find a Mentor, and then there are several options, and you can click on medicine. So by there, so starting from there, you can find names. And another good place to start is to look up the past Europe awardees and look up awardees who work in School of Medicine labs. So that tells you that those labs have the experience of mentoring undergraduate students, so they are likely to continue to do that. So I think going to your major department is a good start. But if you are interested in fields that don't have undergraduate program, don't stop yourself. Go out and find them.
Thank you, Dr. Shi. Dr. Rose.
Yeah, I don't really have anything particularly profound to say that I haven't heard from some of these other folks, Dr. Nyawelo and Dr. Hallar and Dr. Shiu. I guess maybe one of the things I'll add, I think Dr. Hallar was saying, that you don't necessarily need to feel intimidated about presenting your skills or something like that. And I would even go maybe a step further and say that as a researcher and as a teacher, it's our job to do those things. So, if there's an area that you're hoping to work on, and that could be writing, that could be research, that could be analysis, that could be verbal presentations. These are skills that we are excited to teach. And so, I think one of the things that I actually really like in working with undergraduate research students is saying, hey, like, the Office of Undergraduate Studies or Undergraduate Research, they have a form that you fill out and you say, hey, these are some things that I'm interested in working on for this semester or for the summer or whatever the length of time is. And I actually try to sit down with students and take those things quite seriously. And often the thing that they're trying to work on is not something that's like automatically present in this research. And then it's like, oh, okay, how can we adapt parts of this research project or maybe our entire research lab to make sure that we're developing some of those skills? So that's our job. That's what we want to do. And I think the other thing I think we've heard from a couple of these panelists that it can be intimidating, and I appreciate that. I appreciate that it's tricky to walk into somebody's office. And I think, I don't want to speak too much for other people, but I think for lots of us, when you do that, that's some of the most exciting parts of our job, to get to know students individually, to get to know students personally, to get to know perhaps what a student is really interested in working on, where they're interested in going professionally or maybe academically or whatever that might be. And so I think the more you can share of yourself, the more that you can be your fullest you. And you can share that with us. That will help us determine the right fit, and that may be with us, or it may be with somebody down the hall from me, or maybe somebody on the other side of campus, or as Dr. Shi said, it may be somebody who maybe isn't typically associated with undergraduate teaching or something like that. And so I think the more you can share about yourself, the more you can share about your hopes and where you're hoping to go, the more we can connect with you and make sure that we get the right fit for you and things like that. So. Yeah, those are some thoughts that I had.
That's great. Yeah, thank you all. I really appreciate the conversation that you're already highlighting for our participants is, getting through those hurdles of connecting with someone. Also, some of the things you're all talking about is active connections and being proactive, both as mentors and as mentees, right? So I really appreciate those reflections and just seeing, even from our speakers, there's so many different places on campus that you can connect with mentors. There are a robust list of mentors who are super excited to work with students. And I know the office works regularly with just over 400 faculty who are mentoring students all the time. So now the next part of the series of questions is that, okay, so you've connected with this mentor, the door has been opened, and you are now entering. So how do students work with faculty? So how do they work with you when you are working with students and mentoring them? What does that look like? And what are some examples of when those experiences went awry for students? I'm talking about the research. So now you're doing research. Things happened. It didn't go exactly as planned. What happened and how did you support your mentee or student with navigating it? And what do the support systems look like in your research teams? So really, this is about the mentoring while we're doing research. And I would love to have the first person to respond to this question is who we just heard from, Dr. Rose.
Yeah, happy to do so. Thanks for that question, Annie. I think that's, or Dr. Fukushima, I think that's really important. And one of the things that I think I'm hoping that this panel can do, and maybe, you know, in this broader process as folks are considering undergraduate research, is we can destigmatize this process. Research is tough, research is hard, it's analytical, there's a lot that goes into it, but it's also doable. People have been doing this for thousands of years. We will continue doing this for thousands of years. And one of the things that I always try to remind people is that that we all contribute to the research process. And so when we bring our full selves to the research process, like we bring ourselves into it. And so, you know, one of the questions is you know, like what does the research process look like? I'll probably differ a little bit from the other three folks on this panel. I'm a social scientist, and so the research that I do deals with people and interacts with people in their lived complexity and all that. And so what research looks like is often being out in the field, being out of the University of Utah and being in the community. Often that's in the Salt Lake community, but it might be elsewhere. And we're asking questions. And so that might look like interviewing folks. It might look like surveying folks. It might look like, you know, trying to use some GPS or GIS systems or something like that. So that's what research often looks like. And then we do often come back to the university and we try to make sense of those data in different ways. And so we'll, you know, deal with the interviews or the surveys or whatever it might be, and to try to understand it. When it goes a little bit awry, I had a couple of undergraduate students, wonderful undergraduate students, working with me last summer in the SPUR program, the summer program for undergraduate research. And one of my students, halfway through the summer, there was a sickness in the family and needed to return to her home, which is out of state. And she came to me and she was so apologetic and so concerned that this was going to influence what she was doing that summer and the research and things like that. And, you know, one of the things I reminded her is, yeah, this is you. Like, things happen in life. We have sicknesses and we have great successes and we have some, you know, some setbacks and things like that. And often the research is not the most important thing in our life. And so you need to go deal with this particular incident and you know, she stepped away for a week or 10 days or something like that, sorted out some things and then came back. And, you know, I think one of the things that we try to do as research mentors is support those processes as much as we can. Sometimes that's just getting out of the way and letting students be. Sometimes it might be something else, pointing them towards other resources or something. But I think that's unfortunately a common experience that life happens, and I think all of us want to be in that supportive role for our students when it does happen. And I'll let some other folks speak to some of their experiences.
Yeah, we'd love to hear from Dr. Shiu next.
Sure. So I think so this how, in terms of how do students work with faculty, this is a big kind of big topic. And please, I would say, please keep in mind that just like every student is different, there is really no one head fits all. The same goes to faculty. What works for Professor A may not work for Professor B. So I think the main message I want to convey here is that I think the relationship needs to be personalized. Find something that works for you and your mentor. And sometimes it's good to use your fellow students or other professors you've heard of to work things out. But sometimes you may have to carve a way that works for you and your mentor. Now, so if I use myself example, so when students come to my lab, I almost always require them to send me a weekly report. That's a bullet point style. That usually should only take them 5 minutes to write. So I often tell them that if you feel you need 1 hour to do a weekly report, you are not doing it right. You should tell me first. Yeah, and then on top of the 5-minute weekly report, I also meet with them once a month. And that's usually a 45 minutes meeting. So just by checking in with them weekly and monthly, I almost always know what my students are doing. Like I may kind of leave them alone to do their thing, because sometimes I think giving each other space is important. I won't always be there, but I keep my eyes on them through the weekly and monthly weekly reports and monthly meetings. So I have an idea about what's the progress and if there are issues that we have to address. And so I think, so with that, my main message is having a regular and constant communication with your mentor is important, because none of us are mind readers. And so I think a direct communication and done at a regular and constant pace is important. And also at the beginning, you may feel anxious or a little bit intimidated by when you have to talk to your professors. But the more you do it, the more better you will become at communicating with your professors. So this is kind of communication, I think will improve with time. And also, you and your mentor will know each other better. Now, in terms of examples of when the things go wrong, so my personal experience is that usually things go wrong for two reasons. One is the interest, and the second is time commitment. Now, in terms of the interest, so as my colleagues also just mentioned, most of the students come to us not knowing anything or know very little about what we do. And so don't let that stop you. And sometimes once they know more about what we do, or they come in, hey, I want to learn PCR, can you teach me how to do PCR? But then after 2 months, they realize, gosh, I really hate PCR. This is not something I want to do. And I'm not good at holding pipette. I actually want to do something else, such as I like to do simulation, those kind of things. So that does happen. And I think that is something that you guys are young, and it's so normal for you to change what you like, what you want to dedicate your life to. So if after you enter a lab and you find out, whoops, this is not what I think it is, or I become not interested in that, that is definitely okay. It's and at that point, sometimes even if you don't say a thing, we may actually pick that up. Like, actually, you don't seem that interested in my work. Now that won't hurt my feeling. I think, as I said, students are young and you are still searching for what you want to do. It's really changing your interest is a natural process you will go through when you navigate your undergraduate research. And what I meant is, so it is totally normal, and don't be afraid of telling your mentor that I am not interested in this. Can you say, maybe you still want to stay in the same lab and you can change your project, right? Say, maybe you find out your fellow lab mates' projects more interesting. Can I try to get involved in that? Or I become interested in something else. Can you help me, guide me to find another new lab to go to? So that's very natural, and just sit down, have a adult-to-adult conversation with your mentor. And the second is time commitment. This is similar, a little bit along the same line of what Dr. Rose just talked about. Life happens. Sometimes you become really busy for all different reasons, and that's also very natural. And I think so. Don't be afraid of bringing it up, saying, initially I said I can commit 10 hours per week. But all of a sudden, I can only commit 5 hours a week. And that is also fine. And sit down and talk to your professors about that.
Thank you, Dr. Shi. Dr. Hallar.
Yes, I will reiterate everything said by my colleagues before me. I would just expand on that. Research is extraordinarily broad. Our research group is filled with atmospheric scientists, but oftentimes students come and they learn about the research by helping with outreach materials. So for example, making signs, providing graphic art. There are many ways to do research, and it doesn't all have to be directly involved in the lab. And sometimes what happens is a student will join for a few months and they will help perform outreach, maybe at museums, learn about what we do through the perspective of the general public. and then work their way into working in the lab or data analysis. It takes time to learn skills, and you should be knowing that that is what you're there as an undergraduate research to do. Most of our undergraduate research come to me and they're very apologetic that they don't know how to program in a certain language. Instead, that's why you're here, is to learn how to program in that language. And that's what we're here to teach you. So I'd just like to add those 2 points.
Thank you. Dr. Nyawelo.
Oh, yeah, I also wanted to add to what my colleague said. So research actually involves many scientific practices that are useful in variety of contexts. So it could be you will be working in a group where they're developing and using models, or planning and carrying out investigation, or analyzing and interpreting data using, for example, mathematics and computational skills. And usually research is almost done in groups and led by a professor. So you need to learn, practice teamwork, because that is one of the skills that will be important if you are working on a team. And then also develop a sense of community of identity. And then you will be getting also one-on-one mentoring and provide mentor also to others. So depending on the research that you are doing, one of the things that I always told my students is that it will be to establish, for example, a mentor and mentee agreement to address, for example, explicit list of responsibility that a student frequently of communication. And so those are, because we don't know each other. Sometimes a student, everybody's different. So laying out some of those responsibilities help actually accelerate the research. If you would like to be called by your first name, for example, or how good a student could reach you, and those kind of things. Some student, they like, for example, to check on them weekly. Some student, they will find it that, yeah, you are a little bit breathing on their necks, they need their space. So those are things, and Office of Undergraduate, actually, they provide those kind of template that we encourage students to, so that at least we go through it in our first couple of meetings. And in addition to that, depending on your research, you might need, there's things that I will not be able to provide within the time period, like some professional development. So if my research involved, for example, a lot of coding and all those kind of things, and you don't have those kind of expertise, then I will encourage you also to provide some. Office of Undergraduate provide, for example, professional development to students in the area in which they struggle, for example. So those are things that a student could get some of those supports, not inside your lab, but outside your lab. So those are things that I just wanted to add. But for example, if things didn't go well during the experiences, I wanted to share actually 2 experiences that one of them happened last year. And the first one, actually, one of our students, I don't know you, and she has some serious illness and she was hospitalized. And so the family has to come from outside to support the students. And so that was, a student is always thinking about that this is a failure, I will not be. So what we talk to students and always emphasize that you come first, you are a person first. And don't worry about research and all those kind of things. We wanted to make sure that, and then try to provide also resources, because most of the students, if they're coming from out of the state, for example, they don't have, their insurance may not work here. So those are also another burden for our students. So we try to find, so what we did in our leadership, actually, we provide, one of our colleagues, actually, she was really kind. She has a space where she housed the parent of the students, and then other colleague provided a car, so that at least we make sure that the student and their parents are taken care of. And then we work with the mentor that was able to change the project a little bit so that the student could work remotely. So those are things that you have to be creative and then accommodating to those. So those could happen in terms of, yeah, something come from the student, but it could also, could be the other way around. It could come also from a mentor. So that, and what you need to do is to check in with your students at least weekly to find out if there is any, if, for example, if you are in charge of placing a lot of students in many labs, make sure that you communicate with them weekly and provide them the support that if there is anything, it is okay to bring those kind of things up so that we address them before they come a problem. So we learned a hard way a couple of years ago in the middle of the summer. A student, her frustration is boiled over about the project, so we have to find another lab to place the student. So those are things that sometimes we need to be mindful that when we bring a student, it's our responsibility. And I always tell my colleagues that it is not about you, it is about the students. Mentoring is about the student. You are providing services. It's not about that they will produce something in your lab.
Thank you for sharing that with us, Tino. I think that some of the things that they're, that you're all sharing is like, sometimes we have to change who our mentors are, right? And that's normal. Sometimes it's for a variety of reasons that we might move on to different mentoring relationships or projects, right? Could be, as Dr. Shiu said, interests, or because of it's just not working out for a variety of reasons. And so that's really important for folks to know that, there is support for that, right? And that it's normal. Like, we change jobs, we change classes, we change degrees, like change actually happens. And it's all about, and I think what I really appreciate some of the things you're all sharing is it's all about expectations, being clear. It's all about communication. And that, it's also about time, and then thinking about how you're all learning the language of research, right? Both the methods, the modalities, and literally how to speak in that field. It's also wonderful and exciting. Thank you all for sharing that, those complexities that our students may already be embarking on or experiencing, or may come into. But here we are. This is the last cluster of questions, and and we can always return to some of the things that folks talked about if that's needed. But research ends at some point, right? Whether it is difficult end or whether it is it's a amicable end, right? At some point, or even a joyous end, right? Because you are graduating or something along those lines, right? And so I would love to know, though, from you all, like, what happens after the mentoring relationship ends or when the researcher semester is done. So what is this next things, with students? And tell us an example of a success story. What is an example of a proud, I always say proud mentor, proud mentor moment for you all? And we will start with Dr. Nyawelo, the last person we heard. So we're going to go back to you and start with you.
Thank you again. Yeah, so with regard with when the project is done, they come for 2 months or something like that. Most of the time, actually, in my situation, those relationships actually continue, because I have a couple of examples that I could share where mentors are happy with the student results, and then with the relationship that they had. Some of them, they could continue hiring them in their lab, and they continue working, because sometimes 10 weeks or a semester could be short, could be just a snippet of what the research is about. And then a student could go continue working on the same lab, getting paid during their experiences, and then also send those students also, because part of the research, you need to communicate your finding, send those students also to conferences where they could present their research, their work, so that at least they further make connection into their identity in that field. So there's those kind of things that are always important, is just hopefully, the relationship continue. And one of the things that I just wanted to end with, some of the proud moment, it's not, the student was not in my lab actually, but I was running an REU. So I would like to share, because it's important also to place a student into an environment where a student could succeed. So I just wanted to share one quote from one of the students in my cohort, 2023. She said that, I will be forever thankful for your accepting me into your research lab. Thank you very much. This is one of the best summer I have ever heard. For a long time, I thought I didn't belong in physics, but this summer made me sure that there is nothing else I would rather do. So that is a very strong statement that the student, how they felt. And those are those kind of statements, they just came out at the end of the program when the students are thanking us, or then the second quote that I wanted to share is that from another student, also from one of our cohort, where they shared, they said, Tino, just wanted to let you know that I feel extremely lucky and grateful for the opportunity you and Jordan have given me by accepting me into your program. I truly feel like this summer research was the best one I ever done, and I will treasure every moment of it for the rest of my life. So those are code and things that make us continue supporting a student, because those are some rewarding things that we wanted to make sure that the student are succeeding.
Thank you. We love when you share the highlights of mentoring. It's so wonderful. Dr. Hallar.
Yeah, there are so many highlights of mentoring. And that was very well done. I would say, so what happens next? So similar to what was expressed previously, many of our students actually, summer students through a research experience for undergraduate program, do come back and attend graduate school at the University of Utah. These are students primarily from out of state. So in fact, 8 of our students have come back and become graduate students in our program right now. So that is one outcome. Another very common outcome for students is you ask your mentor for a reference letter for your next job. And that's something you should definitely do. And there's of course, a spectrum of how the mentor-mentee relationship went. Some, are exceptional and we publish a paper. Some are exceptional and we don't publish a paper. Some are exceptional, but the student learned a great deal and there's not actually a research outcome. All of those are great outcomes. What I've found is that students who are less committed to the research experience, and I'm not saying that in a bad way. I'm saying that everyone has a lot of priorities of their time. Those students are hesitant to ask for reference letters. And I remind them that we work together. You showed up every day. You did a good job. You let me know when you couldn't be there. You let me know when you can be there. You'll make a great employee. I can write you a great letter. So don't hesitate to ask your mentor for a letter, no matter what the outcome of your research experience was. What I've found with nearly all of my students is that they're harder on themselves than I am on them. So I want them to know that you're welcome to ask for a reference letter, and you should be asking your mentor for a reference letter. So generally, many of the students I've mentored have gone on to positions locally. Many of them are at the Department of Air Quality, because I'm in atmospheric science. Many are at the National Weather Service. So that relationship has been able to continue because I go visit them. I take tours of students and we see each other annually. So that's overall been one of the highlights of my career, for sure.
Dr. Rose.
I agree with a lot of what's been said. I'll share maybe a couple of just a little bit different perspectives on this. One of the real highlights from this last summer, I had 2 undergraduate research students working with me, and one of them was graduating or has graduated from the University of Utah, and as all of us, we want to see these folks succeed and go on to great things. And so she was doing all this research on the summer on unsheltered homelessness, so people who are without housing. And at the end of it, I was like, hey, so, what are you thinking for what might be next for you? And she said, hey, like, don't take this the wrong way. I really enjoyed our research experience together, but this isn't the direction I'm going to go. I'm actually, I think she's going to go to graduate school in epidemiology. Great. Like, that sounds like a fantastic academic pursuit and potentially a career and things like that. And she said, but I want you to know that the very first thing that I'm doing is I'm volunteering with these homeless shelters. I want to continue working with this issue. And for me, as a researcher, that's like, or just as an educator and as a human, as a community member, that's one of the best things that I could hear is, she got something out of the research project. She's going to take her career in a different direction, but this touched her, this moved her, this engaged her, so that she's going to make a little bit of a different choice in life, or just, commit to staying engaged with this issue. And so I think all of us would love for our students to go on to like higher education, because that's what we did, and we found some success in that. And if that's the case, I think that's great. But also, you mentioned, Dr. Hallar mentioned working, with, kind of local organizations and things like that are still in the industry. And to me, undergraduate research is a great opportunity to accelerate a career, accelerate maybe an academic trajectory. It's also just a great way to increase your knowledge. I mean, the University of Utah is such a wonderful place to become a broad, widely recognized contributor to the community. And so I hope whatever degree you get, no matter how, where it fits on the spectrum of all the courses that we offer, or all the degrees that we offer, that this is one of those experiences, that undergraduate research is one of those experiences that enhances your life and enhances your experience at the University of Utah, for whatever level that might be.
Dr. Shi.
So I agree with all that my colleagues have just said. And so I'll just add 2 points. So the first point is about the letter of references. I think the letters of reference, I think that's a very organic continued relationship between mentor and mentee, is to provide you letters throughout your career, especially at the early stage, when you don't have other people to write you letters yet. So usually your college professors would be your first line of people who provide you with letter recommendations. So oftentimes what I would ask my student to do is, so once when you leave my lab, generally they go to graduate school or medical school or industry, go to work directly. And more likely than not, you will need a letter from me. So tell me, so I would like you to think about in a year or so, in a year or two from now, what do you want me to put in the letter? And then act accordingly. If you want me to say that you are someone who is dedicated and have good communication skills, now I know that when you just enter my lab, you may not have that, but I would like to see you working towards that, so that when I write you a letter, I can say that, in this 1 to 2 years of interacting with the student, I see the growth, and he is so and so and so. So in short, I would like to picture yourself, how you want you to be at the time when you request the letter, and then start to work towards that direction. And then the second thing is about, if I can kind of go back to touch this, something goes wrong and you leave the lab. Now, so I want to bring out one situation where you may have to leave a lab, not because anything goes wrong. So in some situations, it could be beneficial for you to have, say, two experiences in 2 different laboratories. That is actually really common for people who are in the route of, say, MD, PhD. If you want to apply for MD, PhD program, or you want to apply for a PhD program. So when the admission committees review your application and your undergraduate research experiences, which is extremely important, often people will look at what kind of experience you have. Is it just 1 lab or 2 labs? And so having 2 labs experiences is a lot of time, if you can get meaningful experiences from both, it's actually considered good, because that means that you've actually worked in different environments. So you are very savvy about how different labs may work differently. And you also, in different labs, you learn different skills. And so that you may actually come in with more research skills than other people. So think about it that way. And then so I want to say that my take-home message here is that sometimes having multiple lab experiences is actually good. Okay.
Wonderful. That's wonderful. Well, let's open it up for Q&A discussion. So what questions do you have? What traits do you look for in your mentees? That's a great question. Who wants to tackle that? What traits do you look for in your mentees? Wow, that's a hard one. All of the traits. Okay, go ahead, Gannet, Dr. Hallar. Yeah.
Yeah, I would probably say enthusiasm and passion for the subject is number one. That's really, if you're excited about it, again, we can train you.
Love it. Enthusiasm, passion. Anybody else want to add to that?
Yes, so I would say the second thing I would look into is communication skills. If the students is open to openly talk about what he doesn't know, or she like comfortable about saying, I do not know so and so I need the guidance on so and so. And I think that openness is so important.
I think I saw Dr. Rose unmute themselves.
Yeah, I was just going to add, I do think there's some like specific skills. I heard maybe both Dr. Hallar and Dr. Nyawelo mention coding. I do think there's some technical skills that are helpful in my world. I think in addition to what Dr. Shiu said about being a good communicator, I think being a good written communicator is pretty helpful. Being able to express yourself in writing is a good skill set. That's also something you can develop while you're in this process, in this research experience, but it's a good skill set to come in with as well. So being a written communicator is helpful.
Great. I'd like to go to the questions in the list that some of our registrants asked. And so one of them was, how can your mentor help you build connections in the industry? So then I believe when people refer to industry, they're talking about jobs outside of academia. So how can your mentor help you build connections for jobs outside of academia? Who would like to take that one?
I'll just say briefly, in a lot of our research, we partner with organizations, and so it's almost like that partnership helps build those connections. And right now, for better or for worse, it's an employees market, and so I think a lot of us who teach classes, we get bombarded with emails all the time from folks saying, "Hey, we're looking for qualified students to do X, Y, and Z." And a lot of times, like we have to turn those folks away and say, hey, I also have to teach. I'm not just here to get my students jobs. And so I think in the research process, a lot of times we have these community partnerships, and folks are exposed to types of positions and types of agencies and things like that. And it's almost like a pretty natural fit for folks to say, hey, I can imagine myself fitting in to this agency or this organization. And so it could lead directly to that if that's what you're interested in.
Dr. Nyawelo, go ahead.
I just wanted to add one of the courses that I mentioned that we used to have in physics for undergraduate seminar. Part of it is also you invite companies and industry who employ physicists, so that at least student knows about those kind of industry. And then so that is basically introducing a student and give them a various research and career opportunity available in the world of physics related to disciplines. So you invite some of those companies that also provide internships and build on those.
Dr. Hallar, yeah.
Yeah, I would just add that make sure to take advantage of your professors' networks. Many of us have taught for quite a while, and we have a lot of alumni, and they all go someplace. So oftentimes there's many alumni from your department at private companies that can potentially provide information, and your professor can make that connection. So definitely, if you're interested in working in a certain field, let your professors know and ask them how they can help. Utilize that network.
That's great. And Shelley's going to plop in a link to an education series event that we had about using research for industry. And so we'll share that at some point. I'd like to also ask the next question. What are some of the things that mentees could do to help better the experiences with in their mentoring dynamic. I believe that's what they were asking. So does anyone want to tackle that? What can mentees do? I feel like we've already heard a little bit about communication. We've heard a little bit about talking with folks. Is there anything else folks want to add to that? What mentees can do?
Communicate, communicate, communicate. You cannot over communicate. I'll just say that very clearly, both written, stopping by, attending research meetings.
Yes, I totally agree. So, and on top of that, I think it's also very important to align expectations. So like, but this is also communication is required to communicate that we agree on the expectation. Yeah. So.
Great. And then we'll ask one final question here in the list, which is, so we know that some of the teams, the research teams, include teaching assistants or other graduate student research assistants, right? So the team is not always just a faculty and an undergrad. There are other folks involved. So what are the ways to be a good TA or research assistant within an already established mentor-mentee relationship? So tips for your graduate student working in this dynamic.
I think I would highlight again what Tino said earlier about a mentor contract, a mentor-mentee contract. I don't think that can be overstated, that setting those expectations early in the relationship on who is responsible, where are you responsible, how will you set up meetings, etc., can really help make sure the lines of communication are clearly defined.
Anybody else want to speak to our graduate students who are both being mentored and mentoring? No, I see it's all quiet on the panel front. I'm going to just say we love having you. You're really important. You're part of the team. And I think just not everyone has the luxury of having multi-level mentors of both undergrads and graduate students. So when you are part of a team like that, how awesome. I think that's so awesome to have the multiple layers of mentoring. And so I know that there's some resources with the graduate school division. And then I know that the Office of Undergraduate Research also does resource some students to be UROP mentors. As a graduate student, we are limited because we just have so much competition with our faculty. And so, but want you to know that there's opportunities for you there as well. We do have 4 minutes left. And so before I hand it back to Shelley to do a little bit of a reminder, I just would like to have, if you all could just, I think the thing that I keep hearing from you all is like the joy you experience with mentoring and that you love this. And so I'm just going to go down the row of having each of you just quickly share just your parting little bit of tidbit for everyone. So one final thing you want to leave them with, very brief remarks. We'll go in the order of Dr. Shiu, Dr. Hallar, Dr. Rose, and then Dr. Nyawelo.
So I think undergraduate research is a wonderful opportunity for students to have a more enriched educational experience at the University of Utah. So since you are here, I think you are interested, and I would totally encourage you to go for it. Don't be afraid of you don't know anything to begin with, and don't be afraid of you are not good at a lot of things we just talked about, like communication, set experiments. Those are things that you will learn after you enter a relationship with your mentor and you grow with your mentor. And I hope you enjoy the ride. Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Hallar.
I would stress that again. Go for it. Don't be afraid, but also know that undergraduate mentor experiences, undergraduate mentees, undergraduate research is not only for students who want to go to graduate school. There are many opportunities for many different types of careers. So I often hear students say, "Oh, I'm not planning to go to graduate school. I'm not going to do undergraduate research," or "I'm not the absolute top of my class, so I shouldn't do undergraduate research." Don't go for it. Everyone has the opportunity and should try to do undergraduate research. Many of my students do go to graduate school, and many of my students work for the Division of Air Quality right after graduation. There are many different paths, but undergraduate research helped them all get there.
Dr. Rose.
Y'all, research is cool. Let's just lay it out there. It's cool. Like, when else in your life do you get to ask questions? You get to throw it out there. You get to say, hey, we don't know something. We, the world, the community, our society, we don't know a thing. And this is your chance to go do it. And so go do it. Right? It's kind of like, you know how sometimes you're standing on the diving board over the deep end and it's like, man, it's kind of cold today. This is going to be cold. And then you got to jump in, and you got to jump in. And you know what? That first little blast is cold. It's legit cold. And then you move around for a second, warm up for a second. You're like, this is actually awesome. I'm so glad I jumped in. Do it. It's cool.
Dr. Nyawelo.
Yeah, I think I will end with this, just from my own experience, that mentoring actually provides me with an opportunity for continuing learning and growth. So it's a beneficial for me also as a mentor. And one of my hopes as a mentor is to instill a love of learning in my students as I share my own passion for learning with them. And I feel there is also a need for compassionate, strong, and dedicated individuals who are excited about working with the students. So those are things that I just wanted to end with today.
Thank you. Brilliant, everyone. I'm going to punt it back to Shelley, who's going to wrap it up for us.
Thank you, everybody, for this amazing discussion and these amazing mentors. I just want to remind everybody about the event evaluation. I just put the link in the chat, and here's the QR code. Europe scholars must fill this evaluation out to get credit for attending today. And we just want to remind you about the Office of Undergraduate Research. We're in the SIL Center, and our website is our.utah.edu, or you can email us at our@utah.edu. Thank you again.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you to our panelists for joining us.